So welcome, everybody. We'll just go through that one more time. I'm kidding. Here's the agenda. We'll talk about these items and we'll move on. But I'm going to share my screen on the errors and omissions, and we'll just go through not necessarily each one, but we'll hit upon if anyone's indicated that there are things that are missing or if they have issue with whatever we have currently. And so I just open it up to everybody to see if anyone has any comments on what we've got thus far, any questions about some of the errors and omissions, and if we have missed anything that you've come across.
Are we going to go through them by section, or are you just looking for general comments on errors and omissions?
Just general comments right now on the errors and omissions. And so these are very basic things. So for example, that first one in 240 section 6.1b, research and philanthropic institutions was literally just left out of the use table. And so this will be put back into the use table as it was found in the original zoning bylaw before it went to recon, or before it was recodified.
I have a comment about paragraph 7. Is that okay to talk about now?
Item number 7?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, about a little more than halfway down, it says, semicolon, that the business zoned area would not be adversely affected and that the uses permitted in the zone would not be noxious to the multifamily use. The word permitted makes no sense, at least to me. I think what you mean to say is existing businesses or existing uses, because the permitted uses that would block anything.
Yeah, so this is exact language that was found in the bylaw currently. So we're just replicating it, but
I don't think it makes any sense. I don't think it makes sense. I think you really mean existing uses.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Yeah. We'll look into that because it does. I understand what you mean. Anyone else have any comments on our errors and omissions list?
No, the rest of them I thought made sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want a point of clarity. This is in addition to the other list that we went over, right? It was either last meeting or the meeting before.
So you mean the general amendments list where we are fixing the use table to take out multiple uses? Yes, so this is in addition to it.
Copy.
We consider these.
On item number 7, so how are they defining noxious? Do we use that anywhere else in the bylaw anywhere?
I believe you do.
Under nuisance, right? Nuisance. I think it's a component of nuisance.
About 8 times.
Yeah, so as an example, in the light industrial sections, where you find multiple or multifamily use under special permit uses, I think it's page 48. That's item number 3 in the standard section.
So is it just a component of nuisance, one component?
Yeah, noxious is kind of a term of art that's probably like one of those things that's best left to case law.
Okay.
Yeah, it's meant to be slightly vague intentionally so that judges can use kind of their discretion about what is and what is not noxious based on the specific facts of a given case.
Okay.
No.
So 2 items that we didn't necessarily include in the errors and omissions section. If you're familiar with the bylaw and it relates to the accessory apartment section. So technically right now in our use table in the agricultural districts, accessory apartments are listed as a special permit use, and they're listed as a special permit with the planning board. That's on page 35 for folks who are following along at home. So that's technically not right. it's only a special permit through the ZBA if it's a detached unit, and it's a site plan review or by right use if it's attached. So those are two, they're likely just going to be amendments, but
Right.
technically they're an error that we need to fix. We just need to figure out how to fix them because there's two different categories. So it may end up as two lines in the use table. I'm not really sure. So we need to just figure out that, but I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. So again, agricultural, it says special permit with the planning board. And in the residential, single residence districts, it says special permit with the ZBA, which
Right.
again, is technically not accurate by itself.
Okay,
So it would be ideal to correct all of it together, right?
Yes, ma'am. Unless we want to go back several times. That can be fun.
Heck no.
Nope, let's just do it together. Okay, any other things on errors and omissions? Seeing none. Let's go to general amendments. So Brian, to your point earlier, this is where we are going to fix multiple uses. So this is what it currently shows under multiple uses in the business district. And this is what we will do, essentially just strike it. We're going to replicate this for the industrial use districts as well, because that's where it shows up as well. And then we found another category that we feel was not covered by the mixed use language, which is shown on the screen here. And so that's item number 3. So it's the option in the business redevelopment district to go above 6 units per acre to 8 units per acre via a special permit. And so we show that in the use table here. Now, in the previous meeting, we had talked about potentially keeping multiple uses as a use, but you know, the more we've talked about it internally, I think the best way to deal with it is to keep it the same way it was shown in the old bylaw, old zoning bylaw, which was not a use. It was simply a clause within, I think it was 240. I can't remember the exact section now, but it was not within each one of the particular zoning districts as a use. So we're simply just going back to that format and keeping it within what is now 245.1, I believe. So it's in the use regulations section, still just like the old version. This amendment will strike it from the use tables as a use.
I think that's appropriate.
Jed, sorry, Frank, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
you.
it's not really a use. It's a special situation and doesn't really belong in the table.
So, Jed, just a couple of points of clarity. The first one I definitely don't want to belabor, but I would have thought that striking the multiple uses from the use table and sticking it back kind of like as a provision would have been under errors and omissions. So I'm not sure to what extent these various categories will influence decision-making regarding how warrant articles look, but it's a thought. I mean, it definitely was an inadvertent adjustment to how zoning is interpreted in a number of districts, you know, that resulted from it. So I just would have categorized as a, you know, whereas an amendment seems like it's more like an intentional change or deviation from past practice. And then I was just wondering, and again, I don't need to go back, and apologies to everybody if I'm being slower than the group, but that subsection 3, can you just kind of explain that to me again? That we covered just before you scroll down here.
This one here or the
The 2 acre and the 6 acre one.
Oh, yep. So we can see it all on one screen. So right now you've got in number 1, any combination of uses allowed in the business districts. Then in number 2, it's essentially allowing multifamily use up to 6 units per acre in B1, 2, and 3. And then in the BR district, you can go up to 6 units per acre, but not exceed 8 via a special permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I'm double checking the business district to make sure that number 2 is accurate. Because, yeah.
Okay, and
Yes.
sorry, this is a new provision, or is this an attempt to recapture something that was previously in the code?
To recapture,
Second one? Okay.
again, another error.
And, okay, so, and if I'm greater than 6 units per acre, but not to exceed 8 units per acre. I'm just having a little trouble understanding what that means myself. Apologies. Are we saying if it's over 8 acres, you still can't get a special permit with zoning? Yes. Okay. So then we are saying if it's between 6 and 8 acres, you need a special permit with zoning?
Yes,
Okay, for BR, right?
yes,
And then for B1, B2, B3, you just can't do it at all?
you
Okay.
cannot exceed 6 units per acre.
Copy. And just curious, is that just because B1, B2, B3 tend to be more dense, or what was the what's the thought process? Do we know behind that?
I don't know,
Okay,
other than it was there before.
easy enough.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody put a lot of thought into it, so.
Yeah, because when we were developing these categories, obviously we just missed the fact that BR can go up to 8 units per acre.
Very good. Awesome. That's a great bottom line. Appreciate it.
And I agree totally that these really should be errors, not just amendments. However, there is one amendment. Scroll up. So this was one of the items that the Attorney General had flagged when they approved the recodification. I think it was back in February. They basically said, with the housing choice legislation, there are other ways to approve a zoning amendment, and our bylaw had not caught up yet.
Right.
And so we had to remove language that said, I believe it was, I forget what it was, a supermajority or something like that. And so we're just coming back and amending the language to show you can do 2/3 except for, when it requires something less. So do something a little bit more vague. And this was actually provided to us by Bob Ritchie.
Hey, Jed, has the planning board had any contact from individuals that own properties in the business districts about strict residential use instead?
Not the board.
Because I haven't had any contact lately, but previously there were a couple of circumstances where somebody had put in units on the second floor and the first floor had been retail, sort of matching what the bylaw called for. And one of the comments was that there seems to be a demand for residential and not for business. So obviously you don't want to flip the business district, but I just didn't know if there was any thought about that.
Yeah, so to be more specific, the board has not heard any of that, but I've certainly heard it.
Yeah.
To exactly what you're describing. People don't want to carry that retail on the first floor anymore because they can rent out a residential unit.
I guess the other part too is that we have this demand for residential and a need for residential. But I guess the problem is if you have, I mean, it's not gonna happen that the whole business district is gonna flip. But I just didn't know if if there was any thought to considering that on like a, permit, special permit basis or something.
Yeah. Probably
I-
down the road.
I think that's when you'd use that clause that says, does it have an adverse effect on business districts? You'd have to make a decision, is the loss of a business use in the district adverse to the district itself?
Yeah, except that I think there's something in the bylaw that sort of calls out commercial on the first floor and residential above or something, so that you're maintaining that quote business characteristic.
Yeah, I'm BR here, and when they were doing the BR, that was one of the things that was the proposal, was that you could do your commercial on the first floor and then put the residential use above.
Right. But I don't think it allowed you to omit the commercial, correct?
No, you had to still keep a component, because they felt
Right.
at the time doing BR that if we lost all the business, use in the area, then you've got an economic impact to the town, and then you have a problem later on.
Right.
Okay, any comments on amendments? Anything that we may have missed? Seeing none, let's go to the next item, which is accessory apartments. So we'll just review that very quickly. Again, the idea here is pulling it out of the use table, which it's just got a lot of text in the use table, making it its own section in section 9. So it will essentially bump everybody else down in alphabetical order. So it'll be accessory apartments. And I think 9.2 is, I forget exactly, but everything will have to be bumped down. So that'll be part of this adjustment, is to renumber everything else, but very minor adjustments to the language. Really, it's a lot of just helpful little pieces in here. So we will get to definitions in just a few minutes, but this section here we'll come back to because it's part of a future conversation about definitions and how we want to handle this type of reference or the lack thereof. So stay tuned. But as you can see, very minor changes, nothing too extreme, making note of references, striking additional language. Any questions, comments, concerns?
So now are those the numbers that are typed in there, the 7,500 square feet and the 7,000, is that the current accurate? Or I don't know why I was thinking it had been reduced to 7,200 in the sewer service area, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I have 7,000 in the current bylaw, and we can do a double check
Okay,
in the E code, but fairly confident it's 7,000.
okay.
Any questions on accessory apartments? Guys, we're going to be out of here at 11:30.
Is there
Don't bet
a-
on it now that you said it,
Yeah.
Jed.
Is there any thought, Jed, to essentially creating the circumstance where these accessory apartments are as of right and just in accordance with parameters?
There's certainly been people kicking the tires on that. There's also been people kicking the tires on making it special permits. So for this town meeting, it's just going to be pull it out, make it its own
Stay put.
section, and then
Yeah.
we'll dig into what we want to do moving forward. Because I think that the model we follow now with torturing people with a detached unit with 2 visits to 2 boards, I don't see that that's valuable.
No,
So I think it's important we just figure out an easy path for folks. So some sort of compromise there. All right, with your indulgence, I think what I'm going to do, as long as everybody's okay, I just want to transition over to definitions because we sort of touched upon definitions in accessory apartments. I think this might be a good time to figure out what exactly I was just talking about. So I'm going to share the definition section. So this is what our definition section looks like now. And we've received feedback, and myself included, that it's not very user-friendly, because it's not in a traditional alphabetical format based on the fact that it's put into categories which are then alphabetized. So we've received, a bunch of feedback that says it's just not really usable the way it used to be. The issue, though, is that there are, Michaela, help me out, there's 6 sections in our old bylaw that had specific definitions that related only to that section, only to that specific bylaw or to that section itself. And they got lumped into this format that you see here on the screen. And in order to revert back to an alphabetical situation, which I believe people would be appreciative of, is we would have to then take those definitions that were specific to those sections, and those examples are the Water Resource Protection District, the large ground-mounted solar. There's a couple of others that I'm not remembering, but specifically accessory apartment is one of those things. So I'm going to go back to that slide. So what we're doing right now is we are referring to Article 3 definitions for the definition of accessory apartment, which technically right now is only associated with the accessory apartment bylaw. So if we wanted to go back to an alphabetical format, we would then take the definition from the definitions list and then bring them back into these specific sections, and only have them within there because they only refer to that specific section. So hopefully that's clear.
So
Yeah.
I guess I would just recommend, if you are going to do that, that you put a note in the alpha format and you refer someone to see within the bylaw, because that will help maintain the user-friendly nature. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So Jed, I would probably say that, especially if you're receiving that feedback, it's a really good thing that you're taking the second look at things. And I would say, just like drawing from principles of like statutory drafting, especially, like it's not uncommon and quite frequent and oftentimes preferred that you have a general definition section for a chapter at the front. And then if there's a specific section, that's applicable typically in limited scenarios, or it's just like a little bit special from the overall statutory scheme for that chapter, you would then have specific definitions for that section. And so there would be like its own unique definition section in it that would say, for the purposes of this section only, the following term shall have the following meanings, and then it spells those out. It's actually like really frequent and can be a useful tool. And when somebody's going to, that section of the statute, or in this case, that section of the bylaw, they're going to be reading that section of the bylaw anyway. So it's probably easier for them to just have the section specific definitions right there as well. And from what I'm hearing from you, it seems like where we do have section specific definitions, it is, because of the specific nature of the section, in terms of the types that you listed at the beginning of this meeting. So, I guess all I'm saying is, if you've been getting a lot of feedback from that, it's something we should seriously consider doing, because it is, a fairly common practice. So,
Yeah. So hopefully everybody, oh, hey, Charlotte. You're muted.
Brian's suggestion is one way, but the commonest way to solve this is to keep what you have now and have an alphabetical index at the back of the book. There's no index. There are definitions, but no index. So have an index at the back.
So I believe in the current bylaw, there's like a table that shows sort of an index, you know, it shows like the categories that they were grouped into.
It is sort of an index, but it isn't an index.
Yeah, I mean, it's right, it's called an index, right, with the words, but it's not easy to understand, in my opinion. And then, so to sort of show people what it used to be, right? So Water Resource Protection District, this is what the old code used to do. When you get to the definition section, it would be written right in here to say that within this article, these are the definitions that have meaning within this Water Resource Protection District. So if we were going to revert back to a situation where, you know, if we were going to show what the old E code had for definitions, it was, as everyone probably knows, it's just an alphabetical list, which is really user-friendly. To Brian's point, it's like you can find it. But then when you're in a specific section that has specific definitions, obviously they just get called out in the way that Brian was just articulating. So what I'm asking folks is, do we want to take that on for fall town meeting? I would like to, because like I said, the feedback we're getting is that the definition section isn't really user-friendly. Let's make it the way it used to be user-friendly and revert back to the way it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sooner you fix it, the better. If you're getting a lot of complaints about how it's hard to understand, that the sooner that you fix it, the better. And it is kind of more how things track in like everywhere else, you know.
Right.
Just have general definitions alphabetized at the beginning, and then. So I do want to be clear. The feedback isn't coming from me. The initial suggestion isn't coming from me. The comments I'm making are that this is how it often is structured in a lot of other places, particularly, you know, statutes, but also other town bylaws. And it's just kind of the general understanding of how things are structured. So if you are getting that feedback and you do want to act on it, then my second comment is it's better to do it sooner than later. So.
Yeah, I guess I would just also agree with Charlotte that somewhere there should be a list that includes everything, so that if somebody has some particular term that they're trying to look up, that there is actually a way to find it as opposed to guessing, right?
Yeah, so maybe we can consult with Richie and Mitchell on, you know, when we go back to the alphabetized list, if there's some way to reference where the specific section definitions are located, right? For example, like, I don't know, large scale ground mounted solar voltaic, yada, yada, yada. And you could say, see, you know, that section 240, whatever it is for the definitions.
Yeah, that would be
Maybe.
perfect. Yep.
Okay. Any objections to taking on definitions? Seeing none.
Well, a question about one of your definitions is family, and then you have 3 potential definitions.
Right.
So we haven't chosen one of them, have we?
That's correct. So if you, I mean, we can certainly look at those definitions. I was going to hold that until we got to that part of the agenda. I just wanted to make the connection between
Right.
accessory apartment definition.
Then I'll
Okay.
hold it. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, let's see. Last item for potential town meeting, perhaps, is home occupation. Hopefully everybody can see that on the screen. So as you can see, we redlined it quite a bit. I know we've talked about it several times. My last recollection was we wrapped this up. I want to say it was towards the end of the fall. And then we had recodification, and so we sort of, put that on the back burner. And now it's back. My question to the group, considering the other items that we are going to bring forward to town meeting is, do we feel like we're ready to bring this forward? And is it good in the format that we've set it out to be? And if not, do we want to table it for the next town meeting? So on and so forth.
So just my input, I think we put a lot of time into this, and I also think that, this is not an uncommon issue for the zoning board of appeals to request, have a request for a special permit for. So I think, I don't know, my impression is that we had it pretty well wrapped up, and that I would love to take one more pass, but I would think it would be good for town meeting.
Yeah, I agree. It does come up, every couple of months at the zoning board of appeals, at least in the year that I've been there. So it might be useful to have it. Also, a comment, if you look at paragraph number 3, negative impacts, you've got the phrase home occupation in there. I think you mean home service business. Or home-based business.
I think, Frank, what we're doing is we're merging home-based occupations and home-based service.
Yes, but we're getting
So
rid.
there were two. So I think that the merged language comes out as home occupation.
No, I
Right.
thought it came out as home service business. Because
Yeah.
Occupation and home-based
Oh.
service businesses were different.
Yeah, so I think the service and occupation is merged into we're calling it home-based business now.
Right, so they get
Yeah.
rid of the word occupation.
This sounds like.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Everyone is going to be an HBB now. But good catch, Frank. Thank you. So how it sounds like so far, everyone's comfortable with bringing this forward. Again, obviously, we're going to have public hearings. So there'll be more opportunity to tweak it going forward, but everyone's comfortable with sending this forward to the planning board.
I have just one other point. I'm not suggesting, I just want to bring it up. On page 3, there's a paragraph. It's got three-letter I's. There shall not be more than 2 employees, blah, blah, blah. And then you come down. No work other than moving goods, materials, or equipment shall occur outside a structure on the premises. I personally would like something in there to make sure that fabrications and assembly work and so forth is not done. We've had several requests at the zoning board of appeals for people who want to do basically contractor's yard work outside in their backyard. And I think a strong language to suggest that that's not what we need we might consider.
Okay.
Just a thought, okay?
Do you have specific language that you've put together yet, or?
No, I have not, but it's just from experience that, people think you can turn your backyard into an assembly area or a manufacturing area, and that's not what we mean. And I have a comment further on the definitions about that, so. maybe
Yeah, I
that's
was
where we can
looking-
handle it.
Yeah, I was looking at the definitions myself, but it's interesting as you look here and you see no work other than moving goods, materials, or equipment shall occur outside a structure on the premises. I guess that would help in some of the circumstances we've had, but I think the other part of that is, you certainly want to limit the storage of materials on that lot. For example, we'll just pick on landscapers, right? You don't want to have, a single family home and parcel with maybe, piles of mulch in their backyard or whatever. So,
The section above it deals with storage,
Yeah.
exterior storage.
yep. So I think as long as people are hopefully actually reading through these and, maybe want to have it be helpful for the building department as well. So that if somebody comes into them and says, hey, I want to do this, they have a bylaw to point to show people pretty much what fits and what doesn't. I mean, there will always be still people who will come before the zoning board to ask.
Can't hurt to
And
ask, right?
right, and maybe there's a catch-all at the end that, basically gives the zoning board permission, because you're always going to have these unique circumstances that we can't predict ahead, right? Whatever future work things people may come up with. Whoops, sorry. But you may offer people sort of a catch-all category where you have an option that says something like, other business that the zoning board may determine is consonant with the residential neighborhood or something like that, just so that if somebody doesn't say, well, all right, I'm not specifically an electrician or a plumber, how do I fit into this, right, or not?
Okay. Yeah, so we can work on some potential language and see if we can fit it in, or at least consider it for,
And let's think about moving it forward in November. It's
Yeah,
pretty close to ready.
yeah, I would agree.
yeah, I agree. I think we've handled it pretty well.
I agree with moving it forward as well.
Any other agreements? Bob, come on, help us out. You agree?
Go get
Come on, let's get everybody just, it's not a vote.
Okay. Let's see. All right, so home-based business, we finished that. So now comes the definitions, unless there's any other comments on home occupation. Sorry, home-based business. Okay, let's do last one. So Frank, you had mentioned the whole idea of family, and so these were items that we had brought forward as part of phase one, this whole first phase of it, and these are some of the definitions that we thought maybe we would bring forward to town meeting now for fall town meeting. Considering,
I like the one from Boston, because it talks about living as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit. That eliminates borders, the boarding houses as being considered a family. Right? I'll just point that out. That's a useful definition, or useful in a definition.
Right, but though I think within the bylaw, there is also the provision that you can rent up to a couple of rooms within your house.
Yes, but they're not considered a family.
Correct. But it's not, but it doesn't preclude your falling under the definition of single family. Yeah.
No, it doesn't, but it might prevent us from getting tripped up over the definition of family.
Yeah.
Now, under the Federal Fair Housing Act, for example, you can have unrelated people and you might even rent them rooms, but if they have a disability, then they fall under that law and we can't control it. But just a plain common ordinary boarder or boarding house, it's not really a family. It shouldn't rise to the status of that. And I think the Boston definition covers that. Not that we have a big problem with boarding houses in Falmouth. You never know.
Yeah. I guess my only comment that I had was under the current definition D, where it says residing cooperatively in one dwelling unit with up to 5 individuals or I just had written a note about suggesting the elimination of the 5 individuals, because I think when you have these circumstances for like group homes with handicapped individuals, while you may have one person or two people in a bedroom, you're also likely to have a caretaker. And I guess I would just urge some caution in reporting numerical limits, because there probably are not a lot of these homes, but there's probably a lot more demand.
How would leaving out the number impact sober houses?
So as a lead into this item, I think considering the amount that we're going to be bringing forward to town meeting, our thinking at this point was perhaps because of the, major change to the definition section, maybe we don't dig into creating new definitions for town meeting yet, unless there's a definition that has been a problem in the past. And Noreen, I know you've brought up structure multiple times. I'm not sure if, again, that rises to the issue or problem category. I don't know if family does either. So I guess in other words, we were just thinking, yes, it's nice to talk about these changes, but I think our time is more valuable focused on the bigger change that we're about to make on definitions, provided that there's no definition there that really is just, we really absolutely need to change this right now.
I think that makes some sense because, when we start talking about family, we get involved with Federal Fair Housing Act and all kinds of other stuff. And I think we just really have to do it right, and if it takes some more time, let's take the time.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's something you definitely want to put a lot of thought and care into. And plus the other thing is even if they're in separate warrant articles or whatever, people may get confused at what they're voting on. They may get confused about restructuring definitions for convenience versus the substantive changes to the definitions themselves.
So I do have a question here. So do you want to totally omit any efforts on definitions, or do you want to do a couple? I mean, I'm just looking at the definition that was circulated for what was formerly our home-based service business.
Right. So that's
Yeah, and I'm thinking, so is it helpful to go forward with the change in the bylaw that we worked on and not to sort of tweak this in concert with that?
Sorry, Noreen, are you referencing a already proposed new definition for it that was already drafted in concert with it, or?
Yeah, so it was in the definitions section that was recently circulated out.
Oh, I think it's showing on the screen. So
Yes.
currently we've got this definition for home occupation. And we also have this definition of home-based service business. And to Noreen's point, if we're going to be changing the bylaw to be an HBB, home-based business, that rolls off the tongue, we're going to also need to likely change the definitions.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be a huge lift. I guess I would just kind of recommend that they both go together so that you don't have sort of a disparate situation.
Yeah. And then to Brian's point, it could easily get confusing when we're switching the.
Oh,
Yeah.
our points aren't in opposition. I think if it does I'm not saying it makes sense to adjust the definitions there, but I think that if it does make sense to adjust the definition, and I would defer to the folks who were more intimately involved in crafting that section, then what you can do is you can put that all on the same warrant article. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there won't be confusion there. So if it makes sense to do it, because we're adjusting a whole section, then I think that should definitely, like, I 100% agree with Noreen, if to the extent that she's saying that and not just asking it as a question.
No,
It should be done at contemporaneously.
Yeah, so I mean, what about, I don't know if it would be helpful for the group if perhaps like Frank and I sat down together and sort of hashed this out and came forward with a revision to present to everybody?
Frank, thanks for offering to do that.
All right.
I'm raising Frank's hand for him, but I mean, I think
No,
the zoning board is really the board that sees this more to the exclusion of everybody else, other than, people probably go into the building department and say, hey, can I do this? Or maybe they get complaints there. So, it will be helpful to them to have clarity as well.
I'd be willing to work on that. That's not a problem. It's something that I see as has some concern and relevance to the zoning board of appeals work.
Okay. So we'll
That's great.
fix that up for you, Jed,
Thank you.
with a bow.
I love bows.
So
Okay,
besides that one, would we be focusing on any others like structure? Since the zoning board's had so much issues with that one over the years. Specifically with the landscape features.
I would be willing to volunteer Noreen and Frank to adjust that definition while they're doing home-based.
No, I think that's a good idea, just because there's been so many issues with those landings and steps and people trying to get out of it, that they could probably come up with a better definition to help things along.
Bob, do you want us to volunteer you too, since you had a long tenure on the ZBA?
Oh, sure, why not?
I think we should end the meeting before more volunteers happen.
Before anybody volunteers near Jed, right?
Right. Oh, gosh. Okay, I think that sounds good. So considering that,
I think they're just, I think large scale ground mounted solar voltaic installation was one more definition that needs to be brought forward. I believe the Attorney General flagged that one in her review. So just to let everyone know, that one may have to come forward as well.
thank you, Michaela, for reminding us. The question, and Brian will be leaning on you for some of this, is the timing for when we have to make these potential changes. So that was part of, I believe, the Attorney General's recommendations. It wasn't a forced change that they required in order for the recod to happen, the recodification. So I think it's also wrapped into the marijuana districts and how we define them and the language that we're using in there, because I think it's a little dated, and I think they were indicating we really need to refresh it.
Can we leave it as a potential option, and then just because neither myself and Michaela or myself and you, Jed, or all three of us have had a chance to have kind of like more substantive discussions there regarding just the interplay of the zoning bylaw itself versus the AGO's ask.
The answer is yes.
Great.
Cool. All right. So considering the fact that we need to get this to the planning board fairly quickly, and it pains me to say that July is almost over with, it's likely that we should, unless the group decides that it's not necessary, we should probably schedule a meeting, one final meeting, to perhaps go over the amendments that Frank and Noreen are going to bring forward. And maybe we can find a date in early August for that to happen.
When do you have to start your planning board processes and notice public hearings?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I had a feeling you were going to ask. I don't know off the top of my head.
But I agree, early August is appropriate, because we don't want to jam you up by giving you something one day before you need it. That's not right.
Appreciate that.
On August 9th, that's 2 weeks.
August 9th might work.
The warrant closes August 25th.
everyone do August 9th, and we can just pencil that in as our date, and we'll do some more research on our end to make sure that that's going to work for timing and et cetera. If it doesn't, we'll just email everybody and figure out a new date.
August 9th works for me.
Okay,
Yep, it's good for me.
Doesn't really work for me. But if
Okay.
you don't mind my being late, which doesn't seem to matter, then it's fine.
We can push the meeting time a half an hour. Would 11:30 work better for everybody? Would that accommodate you,
11:30
Charlotte?
is better.
And let's do 11:30 because it won't be a long
Yeah.
meeting.
No,
Right.
yeah, I'm good with that. And then hopefully Frank and I will meet in the interim and get that cleaned up.
Yeah, and can you just circulate that to planning like well in advance also, if you don't mind? And then regarding August 9th, just a heads up, I mean, there's a pending motion to continue it, but I do have a 10 a.m. hearing. So I may be late as well, but
Okay.
All right, so we'll tentatively August 9th, 11:30. If things change, we'll email the group. I have nothing else unless there's other business that folks want to take on.
Oh, it's very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good
I
night.
know.